There's no doubt about this. Now, I was being assured, I thought at that stage, that he's ready to come over to Christianity. Until he added to that, but you will need proof. Now, immediately I said, proof? Religion is not about proof. Religion is about faith. So, how are you going to go into talking about proof when faith is all that's necessary? And by the way, my degree happens to be in theology, therefore I consider myself also perfect in that way. I know everything. But he said in Islam, we offer both faith and proof. The more proof we have, the more faith we have. And the more faith we have, then we are shown in our religion more proof. And I said, I've never heard anything like this. This is something new to me. You need to check this out. What happens, we're going to go back to the child going to school or being exposed to the curriculum that is set forth now in the public schools, and then on into what's being taught in the universities, etc. There is a general understanding what's going to be presented is what they are going to accept as being so-called fact. And first and foremost is they're going to be taught, if there is any God at all, this is something you need to keep to yourself. In other words, they're going to be presented with the concept of secularism. And that starts immediately because when your child goes to school, they're going to be taught, don't talk about religion here. Don't do that. Why? Well, this is school and you don't talk about religion here. Okay, that's from the beginning. So secularism is presented as being something you have to accept. Whatever religion you have doesn't belong here. So that's already a teaching, isn't it? Next, they're going to be presented somewhere down the line with the concept that there is a big bang that took place at some point in time, or some cataclysmic event took place, an explosion or some kind of implosion, and everything came out of an event that took place billions of years ago. Everybody knows about that, the Big Bang Theory or whatever you want to call it. Somewhere down the line, then they'll be talking about the progression that it comes along, or evolution, how that one thing leads into another. First there's water on the planet. That water becomes an algae because it sat so long that it started getting algae in it. You never bothered to mention how the algae got started. If you take H2O, I'm going to mention some fallacies in these now. I'm going to start tearing them apart. If you take H2O and leave it in a glass from now until Yom Kippur, it's never going to get any algae if that's all that's in there. Something had to be there, but they don't bother to go into that. Then they talk about something had to come along and eat that algae. Where did that come from? Because if it came out of the algae itself, as they say, then it was a cannibal, because it ate itself. They don't mention that. Suddenly there's fish. The fish are trying to jump out of the water to catch the bugs that are flying over. I saw that in pictures that they present to the children, and that the fish's gills, the fish became like lungs, and their fins became wings. How? Because they were jumping up to get these flies and dragonflies that are going over. Nobody mentioned the fact, where did those flies come from? Hello? We never even got into that. You just jumped right out of here. Here comes the fly coming over. You're trying to make this fish fly, but you already introduced the fly. Where did that come from? So we see that these things have huge holes in their theories. Not to mention the least of which, by the way, that a fish and a bird are about as opposite as you can get when you come to animals. Why? Well, a fish is in the water, and he needs to have buoyancy, and he needs to have a balance in the water so he doesn't flop one side to the other. Because he's going this way, and then he turns, he goes that way. So he's actually dense. Fish weigh a lot compared to their size. They are dense. And they go through water, so they have to be very streamlined, so they can cut through water really, really easy. Their breathing system has to be designed so that they're converting water over to the air that they need, the kind of air that they need for them. Totally different from a bird who, on the other hand, has to be built very lightweight. His bones are hollow. And his system of breathing is totally different from a fish because he's flying through the air and he has to be able to take, you ever notice the birds have those holes in their nostrils? They don't have a nose, they got holes in there in the beak, actually. It's not nostrils, they got two holes in the beak. And that's because they're flying, they're moving right through the air, and that air goes in and out. They don't have the same breathing system that we do. They don't have the same breathing system that a fish does. So this is not evolution. This is wild imagination. And that's long before we ever get to the idea that all of a sudden these birdfish things crawl upon the land, turn into some kind of monkeys, monkeys to apes, apes to human beings. We have solid proof, hard evidence, that all of these so-called theories, even their ideas of different man, have been wrong. The things that they presented when I was a kid, they revamped by the time I was a teenager, and by the time I was in college and universities, what was happening, they were totally revamping again, and they've done so again and again. Now we are in the millennium. They call this the millennium, right? Here we are in the 2000s, and they're still revamping their ideas. And speaking always with such authority, and presenting things with such volumes of paper, that there can be no doubt that they must be right. And this is the latest thing. And you pay a lot of money and spend a lot of time to get a degree in this so-called higher education. I don't like to call it higher learning. I call it higher earning, because that's what it's all about, money. Now, I'm going to touch on this idea of evolution of the human being just for a moment, because this is very serious. When we look to the way that they present the human being evolving from the marmoset, that's the first stage of primates that they're coming up with, moving then to the early stage of monkey then moving on up to the baboons to the apes then are the type of the gibbon to the orangutan then to the chimpanzee then on to the gorilla. There's the highland, the lowland gorilla, and then on up to human being, the first human being, according to them, which will be, for instance, they'll talk to you about Neanderthal man, they will speak about the Cro-Magnon man, and they will talk about Lucy, they will speak about these different periods of